You know, it's funny. Every time you turn on the TV or open your phone or scroll through some news feed, you realize something real disturbing. The way the Western media talks about Islam, you'd think they were covering a horror movie. They show the same clips, the same angry faces, the same sandstorm footage, like it's some kind of trailer for Fear of the Middle East Part 2. And I'm sitting there going, guys, you realize there's like over 1 billion Muslims, right? You can't reduce them all to your scary stock footage budget. The problem is Western media doesn't understand Islam. They understand ratings. And fear sells better than facts. When they say Islam, people's hearts race a little. They've been conditioned for it. But here's the twist. It's not Islam that made people afraid. It's the narrative. You could take anything and twist it. If the media spent 20 years running stories called The Dark Side of Yoga, by now half of America would think yoga teachers were plotting world domination from hot studios in LA. It's all about repetition. You repeat the same idea long enough, people stop questioning it. And that's what happened with Islam. You know, I started actual lie talking to Muslims, real people. Not the talking heads they drag out for a 2-minute segment to yell at some anchor. And you realize the values are not what you've been told. Discipline, respect, family, humility. These aren't radical concepts. These are the same values your grandma used to scream at you about before she threw a sandal at your head. But Western media loves to exoticize things. They turn everything they don't understand into a spectacle. Like, look, they pray 5 times a day. Yeah, and? Maybe if we prayed 5 times a day, we'd have less anxiety and fewer energy drinks. They act like Islam is this mysterious alien code, when in reality it's about order, devotion, and compassion. You'd think that would be the kind of thing Western society would want to promote, considering we live in a time where people panic if their Wi-Fi drops for 5 seconds. But no, they pick the fringe, the extreme, the drama, because that's how you get clicks. That's how you get views. They'll never show a Muslim doctor saving lives or a Muslim mom raising her kids with strength and patience. That's not newsworthy. But if somebody does something crazy and happens to be Muslim, suddenly it's a headline. Suddenly the entire religion is on trial. You don't see that with anyone else. When a white guy does something insane, it's mental health. When a Muslim does it, it's the ideology. And I'm like, wow, we really graduated from journalism school straight into storytelling school, didn't we? And what's wild is the people who claim to be defending Western values, freedom, truth, fairness, are the same ones who abandon all of it when Islam comes up. They'll make blanket statements, stereotypes, straight up misinformation, and they'll justify it because we're protecting democracy. How can you protect something by destroying what it stands for? It's insane. But the thing is, Islam's been part of Western civilization for centuries. In art, science, mathematics, philosophy, you name it. The West didn't just meet Islam yesterday. We've been borrowing from it forever. Algebra, astronomy, medicine, all those ancient scholars were Muslims. But you'll never hear that on primetime news because it doesn't fit the narrative. The truth is too balanced, too nuanced, too boring. And here's what really bugs me. If you actually read the Quran or talk to people who practice, you realize it's not what the headlines told you. It's not a book of hatred. It's a book about balance, mercy, self-control. It's about understanding your place in the world. Meanwhile, we live in a culture that glorifies chaos. We celebrate ego. We worship fame. And we wonder why we're miserable. Maybe the reason Islam scares the media is because it challenges everything the media thrives on. Excess, greed, vanity. It's like shining a flashlight into a dark room. Of course they don't want that. Because if people actually started learning what Islam teaches about gratitude, modesty, responsibility, they might stop buying half the crap we're sold every day. The media doesn't want peace. Peace doesn't sell. They want conflict. They want you angry, divided, scared. Because scared people don't think, they react. And once you're reacting, they can sell you whatever version of truth they want. But here's the real truth. Islam isn't the enemy. Ignorance is. And it's not coming from mosques. It's coming from our own screens. The biggest propaganda machine isn't some foreign government. It's your own 24-hour news channel. They tell you what to fear, who to hate, and when to. Panic. And the saddest part, most people never stop to ask why. I'm not saying Islam is perfect. No religion is. But the people who attack it the loudest usually know the least about it. And if the media had any courage left, they'd admit that. They'd admit they got it wrong, that for decades they sold us a cartoon version of 1.8 billion human beings. But until that day comes, it's up to people like you and me to ask questions, to think critically, to see beyond the headlines. Because truth doesn't scream. It doesn't trend. It whispers. And if you listen closely enough, you'll realize Islam was never the problem. The way we looked at it was. And you know what's even crazier? The people who actually live in Muslim-majority countries, they don't walk around thinking about Islam 24/7 the way Western media thinks they do. They're just living their lives. They go to work, they worry about their kids, they complain about their government, same as us. But in the West, the image we get is this constant loop of deserts, mosques, and men yelling, like, come on, man. There's Wi-Fi, TikTok, and traffic jams over there too. You think the whole Muslim world is living inside an action movie? That's how shallow the coverage has been. Western media paints this picture like it's the 12th century everywhere east of Greece. They don't show progress. They don't show education. They don't show art or innovation, because that doesn't fit the backwards storyline. The same storyline that makes people feel superior while knowing nothing. It's the oldest trick in the book. Demonize what you don't understand so you don't have to question yourself. Because if they ever showed the full reality, people might start realizing, wait, these societies have structure, faith, community, things we've kind of lost. The West laughs at religion but cries about loneliness. Isn't that ironic? We traded meaning for convenience. We swapped prayer for self-help books. And somehow we think we're the enlightened ones. You meet Muslims and you see how family works there. There's respect, hierarchy, gratitude. Here, people argue with Alexa more politely than they talk to their parents. We've created this culture where rebellion is a personality and tradition is an insult. But in Islam, there's order, not oppression. Order. There's a difference. It's like the discipline we all secretly crave, but pretend we're too evolved for. You look at the West right now. Everything's falling apart because nobody knows what's sacred anymore. Everything's for sale, everything's ironic, everything's a meme. But in Islam, they still hold the line. They have boundaries. And that's terrifying for a culture that's forgotten what boundaries even mean. You think the media hates Islam just because of politics? No, it's because Islam reminds people that you can't just live for yourself. That's dangerous to a system built entirely on selfishness. Islam says there's something greater than you. The West says you're the greatest thing ever. Just buy more stuff. That's the real battle. That's why they keep Islam framed as the other, because the minute people start realizing that faith, structure, and humility are not chains but strength, the illusion collapses. And you know, I've seen it happen. I've seen Westerners meet real Muslims, not the caricatures, and their whole perspective shifts. They're like, wait, these people are kind, disciplined, spiritual, funny. Where was all this in the media? And I'm like, exactly. You were sold a movie, not reality. But people don't want to bell. That they've been brainwashed by their own side. It's more comfortable to think the problem is over there. Nobody wants to look in the mirror and admit maybe we've been wrong for decades. It's easier to keep saying they hate our freedom instead of realizing we might have hated understanding. And understanding takes humility, something the media doesn't know how to spell. Here's the thing. Every civilization that lost its moral compass started by mocking the people who still had one. That's where we are. We laugh at faith, we laugh at modesty, we laugh at discipline, and we call it progress. But you strip away all the arrogance and you realize maybe the people we've been mocking are the ones holding on to the last bit of sanity on this planet. When I see a Muslim family sitting together, eating, praying, staying connected, that's not primitive. That's survival. That's balance. Meanwhile, we're over here writing think pieces about how to find purpose between Netflix binges and anxiety meds. It's tragic and hilarious at the same time. You start realizing Islam isn't this faraway other. It's a mirror. It's showing us what we've lost: discipline, reverence, connectio. And maybe that's why people resist it so much, because once you understand it, you can't look at your own culture the same way. You start questioning your own emptiness. The West built a world where everything's available, but nothing feels enough. Islam teaches the opposite. That contentment comes from limits. That's power. That's peace. And I think deep down, even people who criticize Islam know that. They feel it. That's why they're so defensive. Because Islam doesn't bow to modern trends or media approval. And in this age, that's the ultimate rebellion. The West keeps asking, when will Islam modernize? And Muslims should ask back, when will the West moralize? Because modernization without morality is just a faster way to self-destruct. And maybe, just maybe, the reason Islam survives, despite all the propaganda, all the wars, all the headlines, is because it's built on something timeless, something that doesn't depend on public opinion. The media can twist, distort, and lie, but truth doesn't need a PR team. It just keeps standing. And maybe that's what scares them the most, because in a world that runs on chaos and confusion, faith, real faith, is the last thing. They can't control,